When a liberal TV host tried to ambush Donald Trump with questions about his marriage on live television, she had no idea it would become the biggest mistake of her career. But before we dive into the details, leave a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. It was prime time on a major network, with millions watching live. The host was infamous for her gotcha moments with conservative guests, and tonight, she thought she had the perfect trap set. Her team had spent weeks crafting questions designed to humiliate Trump and attack his family values. Little did she know what was coming. As the cameras rolled, Trump sat calmly, while the host wore her signature fake smile, the kind media elites use when they think they're about to destroy someone's reputation. The countdown hit 3, 2, 1. What happened next would not only shatter her career, but also show America what real family values look like. It all started with what seemed like an innocent question. Mr. Trump, you've built an empire, become president, and influenced millions. Would you say you're just lucky? She delivered it with that practiced smile, one that makes you wonder what's really behind it. But Trump had seen this game before. Start soft, then twist the knife. Leaning forward slightly, his expression mixed with confidence and amusement, Trump replied, "You know, it's interesting you ask that. The liberals love that word, lucky. They use it to diminish success, to suggest that hard work and sacrifice don't matter. But let me tell you something about luck. It doesn't build skyscrapers, it doesn't create thousands of jobs, and it certainly doesn't make America great." You could see it in the host's eyes. This wasn't the defensive response she had hoped for. But she pressed on, her smile tightening just a fraction. "So you're saying everything you've achieved is purely through hard work?" Trump's voice gained intensity. "I'm saying success comes to those who earn it. Yes, I've been blessed, but I've also worked harder than most can imagine. I've had nights where I didn't sleep, deals that seemed impossible, challenges that would have broken many others. But here's the thing, I've never done it alone." The host's eyebrows raised slightly. There it was, the opening she thought she'd been waiting for. Little did she know, she was walking right into a conversation that would reveal far more about herself than about her target. "Not alone?" she asked, her voice dripping with false curiosity. "Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the people behind Donald Trump." "Of course," Trump continued, "when you mention the people behind me, you're probably thinking of my business partners, my advisors. But let me tell you who really deserves the credit. My family, particularly Melania." The host's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly, like a predator sensing weakness. "Ah yes, Melania. You know, many people wonder about her role in all this. Some say she's rather quiet for such a powerful man's wife." Trump's eyes narrowed slightly, and the studio air grew thick with tension as he replied, "Quiet? No, dignified. Yes, there's a big difference. But I understand why some in the media might not grasp that concept." A nervous titter rippled through the audience. The host shifted in her chair, clearly not expecting this pushback, but she pressed on, her voice taking on a concerned tone that fooled no one. "Well, what I mean is we rarely hear from her, unlike other political wives who are very visible. Don't you think the public deserves to know more about the woman behind Donald Trump?" "The public," Trump responded, his voice a mix of pride and protective steel. "They know exactly what they need to know about Melania. She's brilliant, accomplished, and chooses her moments carefully, unlike some who feel the need to fill every silence with noise." The audience murmured in approval, but the host's practiced smile faltered for a moment as she realized her usual tactics weren't working. But instead of backing off, she decided to push harder. "Let's talk about those accomplishments," she said, her tone now more aggressive. "Because some people say, well, they wonder if her main achievement is simply being Mrs. Donald Trump." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Trump's expression hardened, and even the cameraman exchanged glances. What happened next would become one of the most talked-about moments in television history. "Let me be very clear about something," Trump said, leaning forward slightly. "Since you want to talk about achievements, let's talk facts. Melania speaks 5 languages fluently. She's built her own successful career. She's represented our country with more grace and dignity than any first lady in recent memory. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? Because the mainstream media is too busy pushing their own narrative." The host, sensing she had lost control of the conversation, tried a different approach. Of course, Mr. Trump, but don't you think being married to you has opened certain doors for her? Trump chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You know what's interesting about that question? It shows exactly what's wrong with how some people think. Success isn't about doors being opened. It's about what you do once you're in the room. And Melania? She doesn't just walk through doors. She transforms every room she enters. The audience broke into spontaneous applause. The host's face flushed slightly as she realized her narrative was crumbling. But surely she pressed on, her voice tinged with desperation. You must admit your position, your wealth, your influence. It all affects how people see her. Trump's response was immediate and sharp. You mean how people like you see her? Because let me tell you something about influence and wealth. They don't create character. They reveal it. And what Melania has revealed through every challenge, every attack, and every unfair criticism is exactly why I'm proud to have her by my side. The host's smile had completely vanished, but she was about to make her biggest mistake yet. Well, since you mentioned being by your side, she said, her tone growing bolder, let's talk about that. Your lifestyle, Mr. Trump. The constant spotlight, the pressure, the scrutiny. Don't you think it's challenging for someone who didn't seek this kind of attention? You know what's really challenging? Trump countered, his voice carrying controlled intensity. Watching the media twist everything into their own narrative. Melania didn't just adapt to this life, she's thrived in it. Despite constant attacks from people who claim to champion women's empowerment. The host leaned forward, sensing what she thought was vulnerability. But the pressure must be enormous. The constant travel, the public appearances, the expectations. Some might say it's almost like a golden cage. A golden cage? Trump raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting choice of words. Tell me something. Why is it that strong? Independent women are celebrated by the media unless they happen to be conservative. Then suddenly, they must be trapped or caged. The audience murmured in agreement. The host's composure cracked slightly as she realized her narrative was backfiring. I'm simply suggesting. She tried to recover. You're not suggesting, Trump interrupted, his voice a mix of amusement and indignation. You're creating shadows where there are none. Melania doesn't walk in anyone's shadow. She shines in her own right. The studio grew unnaturally quiet. The host's producer was frantically speaking into her earpiece, but she had already committed to her course. She was about to cross a line that would make television history, and not in the way she'd hoped. Her next question would shock everyone in the room. Mr. Trump, she said, dropping all pretense of professionalism, let's be direct. You're a powerful, wealthy man. You could have any woman you want, yet you stay with someone who's... She paused for effect. Don't you ever think about trading up? The silence that fell over the studio was deafening. Several audience members audibly gasped. Trump sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable for a long moment. Trading up, he finally repeated, his voice deadly quiet. Let me tell you something about value, since that seems to be all you understand. In business, yes, sometimes you trade up. You find a better deal, a newer model, a shinier option. But we're not talking about real estate or cars here. We're talking about my wife, my partner, the mother of my son. He leaned forward, his eyes locking on the host. And let me tell you what real value is. Real value is someone who stands by you when the cameras are off. Real value is someone who tells you the truth when everyone else is telling you what you want to hear. Real value is loyalty, integrity, and character, something that clearly isn't taught in journalism school anymore. The host's face had turned pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but Trump wasn't finished. You know what's really fascinating? He continued, his voice gaining strength. You sit there asking if I've thought about trading up while demonstrating exactly why your ratings are trading down. Because you don't understand real value. You don't understand real relationships, and you certainly don't understand real respect. The audience erupted in applause, but the worst was yet to come for the host. Her attempt at recovery would only dig her deeper. I didn't mean to suggest. She stammered. Oh, but you did, Trump interrupted firmly. You meant exactly what you said. And that's the problem with the mainstream media today. You say these things, you make these implications, and then you try to backtrack when someone calls you out. But let me finish explaining something about real relationships to you. The host visibly squirmed in her chair as Trump continued, his voice carrying the weight of someone speaking not just to her, but to everyone watching. Melania and I have built something most people dream of, a partnership, a true partnership. Not the kind you write about in your gossip columns, not the kind you try to tear down with your gotcha questions. We've faced challenges together, celebrated victories together, and built a life together. He paused, letting his words sink in. The studio was completely silent now, everyone hanging on his next words. And you sit there suggesting I should consider trading up? Let me tell you what that really means. You're suggesting I should abandon loyalty for vanity, trade substance for surface, exchange real love for what? A younger model? That's not just insulting to Melania, it's insulting to every woman watching this show. It's insulting to every person who believes in real relationships. The host's producer was frantically signaling to cut to a commercial, but Trump was on a roll, and everyone knew interrupting now would only make things worse. You want to know why I stay with Melania? Because she's irreplaceable. Not because of her looks, though she's beautiful inside and out, but because of who she is, her strength, her grace, her intelligence, her heart. These aren't things you trade up for. These are things you treasure. The audience had begun nodding in agreement. Some were even wiping away tears. But Trump wasn't done. He was about to deliver the knockout blow that would make this interview legendary. And let me tell you something else, Trump continued, his voice now carrying a tone of authority that filled the studio. The fact that you'd even ask that question shows everything that's wrong with how the media views relationships today. You think everything is disposable, marriages, commitments, values, all just commodities to be traded on your marketplace of sensationalism. He gestured to the cameras, to the studio audience, to the whole setting. You invite people onto shows like this pretending to have meaningful conversations, but what you really want is controversy, drama. You want that viral moment. Well, congratulations, you're about to get one. The host's fake smile had completely vanished. She looked like someone watching their career implode in real time. Mr. Trump, I think you're misinterpreting. She tried to interject. No, I'm interpreting exactly what you said, Trump replied. And now, let me tell you what everyone at home is thinking. The host's face had turned an alarming shade of red, and her producer was frantically signaling for a commercial break, but Trump held up his hand. No, let's finish this. Because there's one more thing everyone needs to hear. The studio fell completely silent, even the cameramen leaning forward, knowing they were witnessing a moment that would be